Hello and welcome to the Denver Homes Market Report. This is Ricky Schoonover of 8Z Real Estate, and you are tuned in to Denver's monthly real estate podcast, the Denver Homes Market Report. Thanks for tuning in. You know what? I used to do this only audio. I didn't have any visual, and I've always kind of done it like this. I was always on my phone, just sitting there talking to my phone as I was doing this podcast. But technology has changed. My old platform no longer allows me just to do the audio stuff, so I had to tune in to Riverside, which is really cool here. I get to do a little visual and audio, and then it automatically uploads them to Spotify, where I used to always either do my podcasts, and then it goes out to the world through Repurpose. So pretty cool to be here with you, kind of live on air. There's no edits, there's no scripts, there's nothing like that. It's just me, you, and my little phone here talking to you. While I'm on that subject of YouTube, please go to my channel, Denver Homes Market. Hit that subscribe button, which I think is right there. It might be right there. Anyways, go to that subscribe button, hit that subscribe button. Our podcast comes out on the first Thursday of every month. That's the goal right now. I'm in a little transition. I'm trying out some new equipment. I've got a new microphone. I've got headphones. Now I'm here audio and visually with you doing our podcast. So thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Today, we've got a couple of real estate topics to talk about. One is going to be agency. So we're going to talk a little bit about agency and what that means for you as a buyer, and also what that means for you as a seller. And we're also going to talk about the interest rates. We hear that interest rates are coming down a little bit, so let's talk a little bit about interest rates. So first, let's talk about agency. So I'm going to give you a real world scenario here. So I'm here at my home office, as you can tell. Let's talk about agency. Okay, so I was meeting with my seller, right? And we're having our listing presentation or our listing consultation, and we're going through all the different documents and everything else that we need to talk about for listing their property, putting it on the market, doing the proper marketing, doing some staging, get it on the market, and what I charge for my services as compensation for doing that. And and we only get paid once we have a successful sale and we get to the closing table. So we were talking about that, and my seller says, well, Ricky, what if a buyer or buyers come in through an open house, or you meet them elsewhere, you tell them about this listing and they really want to buy it, would you reduce your commission and represent both of us? And my short answer was, no, I don't do that. And secondly, I do not, nobody, just get this very, very clear. When you are representing a seller, and then you go to an open house and an unrepresented buyer shows up, and you go back to your seller and said, hey, I'm going to change our relationship from an agency to transaction broker. Then you go to that buyer or buyers and you're like, I'm not going to represent you. I'm not going to advocate for you, but we can do a transaction brokerage. Sign right here. We'll do a transaction brokerage. What that means is I no longer represent the seller. I no longer can advocate for this seller. I also don't represent these buyers, and I can't advocate for these buyers. So the chances of something going terribly, terribly wrong, or the buyers feeling like I supported the seller because I knew them first more than I supported them, or that seller thinking that I abandoned them and went to these sellers and supported these sellers more than I supported these buyers, more than I supported these sellers. The chances of it happening are it's just too fine of a line. And in this particular scenario, this actually happened. I was at an open house. Buyer showed up, unrepresented, loved this particular unit, but they wanted to see other units in the building. They wanted to see other units in the community. So we signed a buyer agency. I took them out and showed them other units. At the end of the day, they came back and said, no, we want to buy the one that you're listed. I said, okay, I'm going to refer you to a colleague, a trusted colleague, and I'm going to have you guys go interview with them. And if you like them, sign an agency with them. I will release you, obviously, from the agency that we have, and then you guys can put in your offer. That way I maintain advocacy, I maintain representation of my seller. So that is where it becomes very sticky, because guess what? As all that was happening, I had talks of another offer coming in. I had talks of more showings coming in. So how am I supposed to not represent my seller, not represent these buyers, but then also with these other offers potentially coming in, these other showings coming in, how are these buyers going to feel if they don't win the deal, right? They've got the listing broker right here. I'm supposed to be helping them. Although I'd be very clear, It's transaction. I'm not supporting you. I'm not representing you. I'm not advocating for you. But I'm also not advocating for my seller in that particular situation. So now we have potentially other offers coming in. We have potentially other showings coming in. It's just a recipe for disaster. No one's going to feel like they got a fair shake. And that's how lawsuits happen. So I have been doing real estate. Most of you know, if you tune into the Denver Homes Market Report podcast, you know I've been doing this since 2003. And I've never, ever done transaction brokerage. So I just don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to my seller, who I already have that relationship with. It's not worth it for these buyers who are kind of left out hanging on their own. They don't know what to offer, what the seller's looking for, how to craft the offer, anything else. I'm just a transaction. I'm just doing paperwork, shuffling paperwork. It's just not fair to my seller. It's just not fair to my buyer. So now they have their own broker. We have referred them off to a trusted colleague. They're in good hands. Actually, they had their home inspection earlier today, and the broker called me. We talked about a few things. They're going to put together their inspection objection, send that over, and then I can take that to my seller. We can talk about it, and I can advocate for them and explain to them what that means, and we can go from there. So that is why I only represent a seller at one time or a buyer at one time on that particular property. Now, don't confuse it. If you're owning a property and you want to sell this property and then you want to go out and buy that property, that's different. This situation is I'm already representing the seller on this particular property, not my house, obviously this is my home office, but on their particular condo, a buyer comes in unrepresented and they want to buy this condo. I do not switch gears and become a transaction broker where I break ties as an advocate for the seller, and I never have advocacy or representation provided to this buyer, and I'm just a paperwork shuffler. I just don't do that. It's just a recipe for disaster. So if you're out there and you're a buyer and you think you're going to go to the open house and find a listing broker who is now going to represent you, that's not how it works. They have to sign paperwork that says, I do not represent you. And they also have to go back to that seller that they have a relationship with and say, I no longer represent you. Now I'm a transaction broker. I don't represent anybody. I'm just shuffling paperwork back and forth. I don't do that, and I just don't think it's a good idea. Okay, so that's where transaction brokerage or agency is really, really, really important. All right, let's move on to interest rates. We all know interest rates have been in the news. Last year, they were about 8%. Over the summer, they were about 7%. Right now, they're in the 6% range, somewhere between 6 and 6.5%. And they're likely to go lower by next spring or next summer to around 5%. So when do you, as a buyer out there, when do you want to buy your home? Do you want to buy it next year? That might sound like a great deal, right? Maybe they'll be at 5% by that point. Or do you buy it now at 6.5%? Well, let's weigh out the pros and cons. So right now, homes are on the market for about 38 days. I can bring to you another real world scenario. We just closed with my buyers over here in Congress Park, $1.1 some odd million home. And guess what? We had home inspection. There were a few structural things that came up as a 15 home. And there were some issues with the roof. So we had a specialist come out, inspect the roof. Sure enough, it needs a new roof. We had a structural engineer come out. Guess what? There were some things that need to be corrected for the structural integrity. So what do you think a seller would do if you come to them and said, look, we're going to walk unless you put on a brand new roof and you fix everything that the structural engineer comes in and says needs to be addressed? If we're at 5%, they've only been on the market for that weekend, and they've got 5, 6, 7, 10 offers on the table, and they accept one, and they get to this point, do you think they're going to fix all that stuff, or do you think they're going to go out there, reach out to those other buyers that were in the wings, and let them know what's going on, and find out if they want to buy it? Or, in this situation, where it's been on the market for 50 some odd days, now we're in contract, do you think they're going to fix that stuff, or do you think they're going to go off market, risk losing my buyer, and now have to wait for another 30, 40, 60 days for another buyer to come along to buy the property? And guess what? They're going to do a home inspection too. Guess what? They're probably still going to want a roof. Guess what? They're probably still going to want you to fix the structural stuff. Over here, with 5, 6, 10 other buyers, they have a lot more options. Over here, where they've been waiting for a buyer, and my buyer is the only buyer that stepped up to the plate after 40, 50, 60 days, they're going to work with us right now, which they did. So my advice to you as a buyer is a couple things. First of all, go ahead and put in an offer now. Start working with a realtor. Call me, 720-688-5110. Let's get to work today and help you buy your home now. And guess what? You can get your rate right now, but you can also take advantage of a program called 2-1 buy down. That is where they basically take a piggy bank, put some money in it at your closing. Either you pay for it as a buyer, or we negotiate and get the seller to pay for it. We put that money in the piggy bank, and then every month you're making your payment. Before you make that payment, let's say it's $3,000 a month, they're going to take $300 or $400 out of that piggy bank, put that down first, and then you're going to pay $2,600. So you get a lower payment each month, and you're going to do that every month. And then about a year and a half from now, if the rates go down, I'm sure they will. Once the rates go down to a point where they're comfortable for you within the next 2 years, then you refinance. You can use that money from that piggy bank to pay for the refinance. So you get the home now, where they're on the market for like 30, 40 days. You get to inspect it. You get time to look at the house. You put in an inspection objection. That seller's not going to want to lose you, so they're probably going to make repairs. You get a great deal on a house now, and then if rates go down in a year or so, you refinance. Now you can refinance to that lower rate. So you can get some really good deals right now on your house, and you get a better rate down the road by doing that refinance. All right, well, we're going to close up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. The Denver Homes Market Report podcast comes out on the first Thursday of each month. I appreciate you tuning in. Please go to my YouTube page, Denver Homes Market Report. Hit that subscribe button, or hit that subscribe button wherever it's at on there. And I appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next month.